All right, while we're waiting for other classes to come, I'd like to set a tone. Okay, thank you. Sure, that'd be lovely. Thank you. 5th and 6th grade. All the 7th graders are here. All right, while we're waiting for the others, and I know some of you guys, we've started this, who can tell me why we're here? Yes, Jacob? Yeah. Great. Arvey's going to be telling us a story near Kristallnacht. Arvey's not going to tell us so much about Kristallnacht, and he'll explain why. But today is a day we commemorate what event in history? Who'd like to share that? Yes, the Holocaust. That's right. And what are some things that you know about the Holocaust while we're waiting for everybody to come? Let's get some other hands. Yes.
Jews were treated unfairly.
What else? I want to try to give somebody else a chance. Who else? Somebody else? What do you know about the Holocaust? Yeah. Eli, maybe just shout it out. Stand up and shout it out. Mrs. Cortu, you want to... Well, there's enough room on the sides. There are chairs in the back and... Yes, Eli? Can we listen to Eli for a second, please? 6 million Jews died. What else? Yes. Ryder? Yes, please. That's right. A bunch of people were deported, taken away from the country in which they resided, and sent to other places. Sometimes they were deported within their own country, but many were deported to other countries. So those people are called refugees in many ways, although in some ways they were more like slaves. Yes. Yes. That's right. It wasn't just Jews who were persecuted. It was communists, it was gypsies, it was people who were gay or lesbian. Yes. The Holocaust started by a 12-year-old boy's murder. Right, there was a Jew who murdered somebody who supposedly, that's what precipitated, who murdered a German diplomat or person of prominence that led to Kristallnacht. Okay? Yes, Jacob? Right, so actually it became World War II. The Holocaust led to World War II, what happened in Germany and countries around it in Europe. And in 1945, it ended. All right. Anybody else? Okay, so by way of introduction, we are here to commemorate Kristallnacht. And Kristallnacht is the night of broken glass. The night literally means the night of crystal. But there were, and it happened both on November 9th and 10th, we're a day early. Tomorrow is actually the day of Kristallnacht, or the first of the 2 days. There were 100 people who died at Kristallnacht, but not more significantly, but just as significantly, was the fact that the crystal referred to the broken glass, because there was the destruction of 1,000 synagogues, the glass of 1,000 synagogues. And I remember one of the former presidents of Hebrew Union College, which is where I went to school, talking about having lived in Germany and seeing a Torah from his synagogue in the water on the street. Things were burned, and all sorts of things were broken. 7,000 Jewish businesses had their windows broken, and 30,000 people that in those 2 days were taken to concentration camps, which were work camps, and primarily work camps at that time, but where many people died. And this was a turning point. Hitler had come to rise in 1932, 1933, and slowly different things were done against the Jews, and certain privileges were taken away, because Germany was a democratic society. All right, and what type of society do we have today? Democratic society, where everyone was supposed to have the same rights. But slowly but surely, different rights were taken away. And Kristallnacht was like this event that led to many more bad things happening to the Jewish people and to the other 6 million people who were also persecuted. And I think it's appropriate that it's today that we commemorate Kristallnacht, because today is a historic day in our own history and in the history of democracy here in the United States. Whatever happens, it's the first time that a woman was on a presidential ticket, and we have to remember that we saw the increase of rights given to women. We've already had, it's nice to say that we've already had, an African American who became president, and African Americans could not always vote in this country. And so it's appropriate today, on this day of election, when many of us are so proud that we have our stickers, our labels saying that we voted, which says that we've participated in democracy. And it's really important that every day of your life that you participate in democracy and protect the rights not just of Jews, but of every person in this country. Because if we all do that, hopefully we won't have another Kristallnacht, another Nazi type of Germany. So it's really beautiful that today is the day that we commemorate it. And I want to say one more thing before I introduce Arvey. So there were 6 million Jews who died in the Holocaust, and at the end, after Arvey has spoken, we're going to light 6 candles, 6 yahrzeit candles, 6 memorial candles, one for each of the million Jews who died. And I want you to think about the fact, 2 things about that. Number one is 6 million. There were 5 million people. If you want to try to imagine what 6 million is like, because it's hard for us to imagine. There were 5 million people the other day celebrating the Cubs' victory. 6 million is 1 million more of that. Could you imagine if those people just didn't exist? And to think of each person, but think of it not just as a group of people, but that each individual, what we lost when each of those people died in the Holocaust, perished, is that had Arvey not survived, now Arvey's not from Germany, he's from Poland, but had Arvey not survived, just think of how that would have affected your lives. Because every day you come to religious school or Hebrew school, midweek school, Sunday school, who's there to greet you? Arvey. Arvey has made a difference in each and every one of our lives. And we lost the potential for all of those 6 million people to make a difference in our lives, in our society, and in the world. And so that's why we need to remember, to honor their memory, and also to inspire us to act in ways that make certain that it will never happen again. And so, Arvey, we're so proud. A little while ago, we got to celebrate Arvey's 90th birthday. And now we are celebrating Arvey's life and all that he has given to us. So, Arvey, we are so blessed to have you here, and we are delighted that you are here to share your story.
Thank you. I'm going to speak about a shtetl. Now, do any of you know what a shtetl is or was? Nobody?
That's a shekel. A shtetl is a different, it's very close. Do you know what a shtetl is, anybody? I think, Arvey, you're going to have to tell them.
All right. A shtetl was either a village or a small town. The whole population of that village or town was Jewish, or most of the population of that town was Jewish. And as a matter of fact, there were unlimited numbers, by the dozens, or probably say by the hundreds even, at various times, spread out all over Eastern Europe, all the countries of Eastern Europe and the countries of Central Europe. This is where the Jews who did not live in the cities, because some of the countries prohibited Jews from living in their major cities. So the Jews had their own little shtetls all over. And as I say, there was doubtless at least over 100 or so scattered over that area. And that was in 1935 when I came there, when I was there. But when I left Poland, all these shtetls were there. 9 years later, when I returned to Europe as a soldier in the U.S. Army, not a single shtetl existed in Poland or any other place. I'll describe to you how a shtetl operated. The shtetls had every one were pretty much the same. They all had a marketplace right in the center of town. And on market days, which were on Mondays and Thursdays, this is when the Jews and non-Jews came to buy and or sell their goods. For Jews, it was also an opportunity to go to the synagogue, pray, and read the Torah. To this day, by the way, the custom of being able to read the Torah back here on Mondays and Thursdays, in addition to Shabbat, holidays, Rosh Chodesh, still is being followed. In other words, in theory, if you want to have a bar or bat mitzvah on Monday or Thursday, it's okay, because you can read the Torah on those days because of this custom that existed in European shtetls. The shtetls operated on a communal spirit where giving to the needy was not only admired, but expected and essential. The problems of those who needed help were accepted as the responsibility of both the individual and the community. In this regard, our extended family of 33 people were more fortunate than most. We had an Uncle Morris who had been in America since 1910, and was doing well. Over the years, he sent what we in Yiddish called peklach, which are packages of clothing for the entire family, as well as money to help finance home purchases and the holiday events. When the package of clothing arrived, the family gathered at my grandfather's house, and the items of clothing were distributed to the adults and children according to their need and according to their fit. My immediate family consisted of my mother and my older brother. My father had died when I was 2 years old. We lived in the house behind our grandfather's, consisting of one large multi-purpose room containing what is called in Yiddish a pripperchik, which was a coal-burning stove used not only for cooking but for heating as well. A stone oven was also in that room, a table and chairs, and a bedroom containing one large bed. There was no indoor plumbing, gas, or electricity. My mother had a stall at the marketplace, and on market days where she sold coal to the local farmers. Like all Jewish children in the shtetl, I began my Jewish education at the age of 3. I started Cheder, which of course was school, with about 8 other children. We were carried there on the back of one of the townsmen during the bad weather. Cheder was held at home of the Melamed, the teacher, in a small room with a large planked wooden table and 2 wooden benches. The teacher sat at the head of the table and the children on either side. We were taught the alphabet and about God and the Torah. Yiddish was the only spoken language. In the summer of 1935, my grandfather was dying. His son, my Uncle Morris, and his wife, Sarah, came from the U.S. to visit him for the last time. From his deathbed, my grandfather told my Uncle Morris that the situation for Jews in Poland was very bad and most assuredly would get a lot worse with Hitler in Germany. You and your wife, Sarah, he said, are childless. I have 2 fatherless grandchildren, your nephews. After I die and you go back to America, take them with you and they will be your children. Several days later, my grandfather died and was buried by the townspeople. Yes, they did not have funeral parlors either there. The townspeople always buried their own, from digging the grave to setting the stone. After my grandfather's death, my uncle contacted the American consul in Warsaw to obtain visas, not only for my brother and me, but also for 3 of my cousins as well. We all traveled to Warsaw to be documented and for physical examination. My uncle received visas for my brother and me. Visas for my cousins were rejected for various reasons. This was not unusual. The U.S. had very strict immigration laws in the 1930s, particularly relating to people seeking to immigrate from Eastern European countries. You don't have to think too hard to know what people from Eastern European countries wanted to come to America in the 30s. Us Jewish people, of course. Yes, there was overt anti-Semitism in the U.S. at that time. Many resorts, golf courses, restaurants, and other facilities displayed signs, quote, Jews not wanted, or no Jews allowed, or Jews and dogs not wanted. Many deeds for homes contained what were called restricted covenants, meaning that those homes could not be sold to Jews. On the radio on Sundays, vicious anti-Semites spewed their views. Most vicious of all was a Catholic priest named Father Coughlin. This was America then. My uncle and aunt took my brother and me to America, and we became their family. But they did not give up trying to also bring the 3 cousins here, and within 3 years, they came from Poland to America, and we became an even larger family. 5 years later, in 1940, the balance of our family in Poland, 28 people in all, my mother, grandmother, aunts, uncles, cousins, all perished. No, not in gas chambers. They didn't have those built yet for the small shtetls. They were, all the Jews in the shtetl were rounded up by the German soldiers with the aid and assistance of the local Poles. All the Jews of the town were forced to dig a large trench. They were ordered to undress, lined up, shot, and dumped into the trench. Their Polish neighbor happily buried them, and the shtetl ceased to exist. And this happened to all the shtetls that were in Europe. I arrived in America, a new world, a new life. I had come from a world where there were no paved streets or sidewalks, no street lights, no radio or telephones, no indoor plumbing, no refrigerators or other appliances, no cars, no buses, no streetcars or trains, and so many other things that I never knew existed. I was totally awestruck, and of course, I didn't know the language. I just knew Yiddish. That's the only language I knew. To some extent, I felt lost in this world, but it did not take long for my young mind to absorb it all. In 5 years of attending elementary school, I graduated the 8 years of school. 3 years later, I graduated from the 4-year course at high school, and then attended a year at Northwestern University. I started my sophomore year, and 15 days later, I reached my 18th birthday and was drafted into the U.S. Army. I spent 1 week at Fort Sheridan over here for processing, then was shipped to Fort McClellan, Alabama, for 9 weeks of intensive training. Then, after 8 days aboard a ship, we landed in France. We moved southeast towards the Rhine and to cross over into what was the German city of Cologne, a city of close to 800,000 people. To a young Jewish boy like me from the shtetl, it was a beautiful sight. The whole place, Cologne, was a vast wasteland, looking in every direction for miles as far as the eye could see. There was nothing but rubble, about 8 to 12 feet high, and sticking out from all the rubble was the spire of the partially destroyed famous Cologne Cathedral. A German architect called it the world's greatest heap of rubble. Many other German cities were also reduced to rubble. I did not feel bad about it. Like every other soldier, I sent and brought home some war souvenirs. Among those was a brass Hanukkah that I found in the partially destroyed home. I have used that Hanukkah ever since. Also, I acquired 2 German army rifles. When I came home in 1946, there was a Jewish underground group illegally collecting and shipping arms to the Haganah, which was the underground Jewish army who were fighting the British in Palestine. I donated these souvenir rifles to that group to help the Haganah in its fight against the British. Incidentally, this illegal group collecting arms for the Haganah was located right here in Glencoe. After being discharged from the U.S. Army in August of 1946, I returned to Northwestern University and graduated. In 1949, I enrolled in Northwestern University School of Law and graduated in June of 1951 and was admitted to the Illinois Bar in November of that year. I joined the staff of the State's Attorney's Office of Cook County as an assistant state's attorney and spent the next 10 years as a prosecutor at the Criminal Courts Building. After retiring from that office, I practiced as a criminal defense attorney for many years. In America, I did not abandon my Jewishness. I grew up in a non-Jewish neighborhood on the northwest side of Chicago where the family department store was located. We lived in a kosher observant home. On Saturdays, I attended a small Orthodox synagogue in our neighborhood, supported by the local Jewish businessmen. There I became a bar mitzvah when I was 13, of course. On weekdays, I attended Hebrew school and Hebrew high school at the Albany Park Hebrew congregation, an Orthodox synagogue. I took a streetcar to get there. The fare was 3 cents. I don't know if all of you know what a streetcar is. You all know what a streetcar was or is? Yes. Okay. Okay. What do you want to say? Would you speak a little louder? I can't hear. It's just like they have in San Francisco. That's correct. Except those were the main form of public transportation in those years. That is in the Chicago area. And on Friday evenings after Shabbat dinner, the family attended services at Anshe Emet, a conservative synagogue, where I also attended Sunday school. In later years, married with a family, we joined the Niles Township Jewish congregation, a Reconstructionist synagogue. I covered the whole range, Orthodox, conservative, and Reconstruction Judaism, before finding my spiritual home right here at North Shore Congregation Israel. It is here at North Shore during the past 26 years that I have gained a greater understanding of Jewishness. I have done this through regular attendance at Friday evening services, Shabbat minyan services, holiday and festival services, through learning the prayers and understanding them, through studying the Torah and the prophets repeatedly, year after year, and equally important, through interplay and interrelationships with my fellow congregants and with our school children here, who are the future of the Jewish people.
So who has a question? We have time for many questions for Arvey. I'm going to ask you to say the question loudly, and I'll repeat it in the microphone so people who are streaming can hear it. Kate, would you like to do one? Stand up. What was your brother's name?
My brother's name was Sanford.
Sanford. Yes, Mrs. Horwitz?
Mr. Wolke, you said that you went to college at Northwestern in the 40s.
Yes.
Did you find any anti-Semitism with regard to getting into Northwestern or while you were being educated there?
So the question was, did you experience any anti-Semitism at Northwestern, either in the acceptance process or while you were there?
I did not, but there was a good reason for that. Northwestern did have a quota of Jews at the time. However, most of them, that age, were already in the service. There was a war going on. So I lucked out because I did reasonably well in high school, had good grades. So I was accepted there at that time. And of course, after the war, under the GI Bill, many Jewish and non-Jewish veterans attended Northwestern, and there was no problem whatsoever.
Can you tell them what a quota is? What's a quota? A quota. What is a quota?
I think it was as low at that time as about 10%.
Oh, not how much, but a quota is when only a certain number of Jews or any group is allowed to participate. Another question. Yes. How traumatic was it to be living at that time in the different places, whether that be in Poland or the United States, in the Army?
Well,
Excellent question.
it was very dramatic, particularly when I got overseas and news got out about what was being done to our people. I mean, what could be more, well, I don't know, as far as whether it was dramatic or really shocking to find out what it was. That's why when I saw that city of Cologne, which was one of the most beautiful cities at one time, having 800,000 people, virtually non-existent, all dust and dirt, and the rest of the Germany was pretty much the same way. I did not feel badly at all about that.
So let me follow up with a question. You said that the news got out when you were in the military.
Yes.
What is it that you knew about what was going on in Europe in regards to the Holocaust that you didn't know when you were in the United States? And why was that?
Well, I think the military, my understanding was at the time, our people were asked, including the president, to bomb out some of these German ovens that they were burning up our people in. And they said for military reasons there were more important things to do for the military than bomb out all these ovens.
Yes.
What were some of the things you did as a kid? Like games or something like?
I did it.
As a child, what were some of the things that you did in Poland or when you, how old were you when you came to the United States?
Well, we left in September, I was 8, and when we got to October, I already was 9.
Okay.
All right?
So what were some of the games that you played when you were a child in Poland or here?
Well, we used to play baseball. You know, one of us take a bat and hit the ball, and the other, etc. For entertainment, we went to movies, which were 10 cents was a ticket. You could see 2 or 3 movies at one time.
Great.
We went to the park as well. We used the swings in the park and some other equipment.
Okay. Hannah?
Well, when you were in the military, did you ever visit like one of the concentration camps?
Did everybody hear that? I'll repeat it. When you were in the military, did you visit any of the concentration camps?
No, we did not, but we had reports directly from other soldiers who did. And that's how it really spread.
And what year was that when you heard the
That was,
reports from other
rather-
soldiers?
Actually, that was in 45, almost near the end of the war.
Okay, not till the end of the war. Yes? What was your role in the military? What did you do?
What I did, I was a sergeant, and I was attached to a field artillery battalion where we shot up. We had guns that shot a projectile for about 5 miles, and they could destroy a whole section of the city. And that's what we did. But I specifically went up in a small airplane, which was known as a Piper Cub. We flew over the German lines, And if any of the German soldiers were hot shots and shot at us, we knew where they were, and then we called the guns to come in on them. As the war came to a close, and we started capturing most of the German soldiers, I did interrogating some of the soldiers to find out if there were any of them were war criminals. And the reason I was able to do so is because, thanks to my education, I was fully versed in German as well as French. So I did interrogating with what we call the S2 intelligence, interrogated prisoners of war.
So what's the difference between a soldier and a war criminal? Because you're telling us that not all soldiers were war criminals. So what's
That's
a war
correct.
criminal?
Well, there were several instances where German soldiers captured American soldiers, particularly during the Battle of the Bulge, so-called, and many of them, instead of just keeping them in prison camps, they killed American soldiers, and that was done more often than was reported even.
So there are actually rules in war and things you can and cannot do even if they're the
That's
enemy.
absolutely correct.
All right, we're going to go around this way so everybody has a chance. So, yes. Oh, why did you come to the United States? Well, we heard a little bit about why you left, right? Grandpa said you got to go.
Because my grandfather, as he was dying, said to my uncle, what I read, that Hitler is bad, things are going bad because of Hitler now is in power. And you got to remember that in 1939, September of 1939, the war did start when Hitler attacked Poland. So he knew, at least he felt it was coming, so he wanted to save us, and that's what he did. He saved me, he saved my brother, he saved 3 other of my cousins.
Yeah. And why had your uncle come here in to the United States in 1910?
1910.
What, do you know why he came that early?
Sure, because it was being drafted into the Russian army, which wasn't exactly a Jewish thing. Many Jews actually injured themselves so they wouldn't have to go to the Russian army.
So although you lived in Poland, that was kind of under the purview of Russia, and you could have been drafted into
Right.
the army. Does that make sense? Because that's why they came to the United States. Okay, yes. So how old were you when the Holocaust happened?
Well, depending when whether you're talking about the Holocaust just being the ovens, etc., that I don't know, because I don't know exactly what date they started with the ovens. But as starting in 1939, in September, when the Germans invaded Poland, they started killing off, as I just described, of having all the Jewish people dig trench, take off their clothes, then they were shot right there. So that's the way every single one of the shtetls, that's the way the Jews died. As far as I'm concerned, of course, that was also part of the Holocaust, although the most infamous one is with the chambers.
And in 1939, how old were you? I know we could do the math.
1939, from 26 to 39 is what?
13.
I was born in 26.
Okay, so 13 years.
Yeah.
He was 12 years old when Kristallnacht happened,
Right.
which was again, remember we said it was a watershed event that led to many more bad things happening to the Jews, and 39 when people were killed in the shtetls. Okay, yes, we're going this way. Yeah, okay, go ahead, one more. Did you like being in the Army? Or did you get anything out of the experience? How about if we ask that?
Yes, I was young, powerful, and I was a go-getter. I mean, I was Yes, I was, because we were fighting for our existence at the time, and I thought it was a good fight, and somebody had to be there. And as a matter of fact, before I was drafted, I wanted to volunteer, but I was too young, so they wouldn't take me. So I had to wait 16 days after I was 18 years old.
Eli? When's his birthday? It's October 26, 1926. Was that pretty good that I knew that? It's the same day as my son's birthday. He told us what year. Okay, Paul.
Arvey, you were a young child and your grandmother decided that you and your brother would come to America. Did you have any say-so there? Were you upset about it? What were your thoughts?
No,
Okay, so the question, let me repeat the question. The question was, when your grandfather said, Arvey, you and your brother, you're going now, how did you feel about it? Did you have any say in it?
Well, actually, I was happy to go, because Jews, even around the dinner table or wherever they had the discussion, were talking about America, how wonderful America was. So I was looking forward. I heard these stories, and of course, I was, my father had died when I was young, and it was just my mother, and I decided, my mother actually decided to let us go.
Okay, Ashley, you have a question? No, Arvey was not in the concentration camps. He was either in the United States or in the Army, fighting for the U.S. Army against the Germans and their allies. Yes? Okay, how did it feel? Remember, his father died when he was 2. Okay, so how did it feel when that you had to leave your mother behind and other relatives of yours to go to the United States?
Well, we expected that when the war would be over, that my mother could come and be with us, and many of the others as well. We were looking forward to the end of the war for that primary reason, so that my mother and many others of our relatives could be brought to the United States.
And how did you find out that she died? And when did you find out that she died?
Shortly after the war, because there was always, in almost every instance, there were always some people that escaped, and they made reports.
So you didn't know for many years that your mother had died?
Well, actually, we knew shortly after the war.
Shortly after the war?
Because all this stuff started coming out.
Okay. Yes, Shana. How long did it take for you to learn English? Because you told us you didn't know any English when you came to the United States.
Not a word. I would say maybe 6 months at most.
Okay, we want Arvey in our school as a Hebrew student. 6 months, okay, guys? That's what it is. Mrs. Hainsfurther, you had a question.
My question is, Kristallnacht happened about a year after you came to the United States. Were you still hearing from your family in Poland? Did they report their experiences about it at all?
Kristallnacht happened a little bit after you came to the United States. No, actually, you came to the United States in 39. What year did you come?
35.
You came in 35. We're both wrong. So when was the last time you heard from your relatives? Is that what you want to know?
Did you hear about Kristallnacht from his relatives or not?
And did you hear about Kristallnacht from your relatives? Or how did you hear about Kristallnacht? Because you were already in the United States.
Right. There was, it was quite a thing that Jews did discuss about it, because it became nationally known, and the papers certainly carried a lot of the description of it, and we discussed it at the time, I recall. And we said how glad we were that we had gotten out of there before all this went on. Because within 10 months after Kristallnacht, the war started.
Right. Okay, we're going to go to this side. Who has a question over here? Well, I'll come back if we have time. Yes, Eli. How long were you in the Army?
In the Army, 2 years.
And what percentage of it was overseas?
Well, after,
Speak into that microphone.
yes, after 12 weeks of training, we went overseas. So 2 years minus 12 weeks.
Okay. Yes.
How is it different? How did you feel differently as a Jew from being a Jew in Poland to being a Jew in America?
Well, do you know the difference between day and night? That's the way it was.
Did you all hear that? Okay, you have to speak a little louder. Well, maybe, here, let's do this.
But-
You take this microphone, and I'm going to take this one.
All right. The question was?
What's the difference between being in Poland, a Jew in Poland, and a Jew in America? Speak right into the top there.
My answer was, is there a difference between day and night?
Okay, now we can really hear you. You want to go one follow-up? Go ahead, no.
Was it a good change? Was it better? Or right
Well,
At the beginning, let me repeat it. At the beginning, was it for the better or for the worse?
it was always for the better here. Never was it worse here. As bad as may have been in the 30s of anti-Semitism here, and it was anti-Semitism here at the time, still, this was still a wonderful, wonderful world, as the Jews of Europe had always claimed it was, even though they weren't here yet.
Okay, Annabelle. Say that again. Oh, were you ever criticized or discriminated against for being a Jew in Poland?
Well, I was just denied going to school. That's why I never learned Polish.
Well, you didn't speak Polish.
No. Just a few words which I picked up on my own. Because for Jews to even be able to go to school had to pay off whoever was in charge of running the schools. We didn't have payoff money. We had more kids than money to pay to put them through Polish school. So Cheder, Yiddish school, was good enough.
Okay, so Jewish school. And in Cheder, what did you study? Did you study math and science or Torah?
No, just the alphabet, the Torah, stories from the Bible, things of that nature.
Yes, Helen.
Where did you learn German and French?
Where did you learn German? And I thought did you learn French or Spanish?
French.
Oh, French.
French in high school. Then when I got to...
You have to talk right in that microphone.
French in high school. And when I got to Northwestern, they said, you already know French. I wanted to continue. They said, no, you already took it, but you need another language. So I said, I'll take German. So I learned German in college and I had to learn French in high school.
Great. Adi? How did his father die? How did your father die?
Well, as I think I mentioned it earlier, many Jews had maimed themselves one way or another so they wouldn't have to go to the Tsars, to the Russian Tsar's army. Well, my father was given a different way of avoiding that. He was hidden in the walls of a house. And as a result, his kidneys were affected and he perished because of kidney disease.
For how long was he hidden in a house?
Oh, I really don't remember that, but I know he was hidden. I was told he was. I never got the details as to how long, but it was obviously for a long time.
For that to happen. Okay. Kate, you've already had a chance. Okay, go ahead, Kate. were you ever angry at anyone, right? Could have been a lot of people that Arvey would have been angry at.
Sure, I'm angry. I think everyone at one time or another, if they're human, they're angry. Some situations arise where you get angry, sure. I do get angry.
But was there a part of your experience, having left your family or the situation you were in Poland, that made you angry?
No, because I was always part of a loving family. There was no reason to be angry. We did what we could do in Europe under the circumstances, and over here we were treated fantastically well. There's no reason to have any anger at all whatsoever.
Okay, last couple of questions. Mrs. Levin, then, and we'll get back over here.
How did you travel from Poland to the United States? And do you remember anything about that venture?
How did you travel from Poland to the United States, and do you remember anything about that venture?
We traveled by horse and buggy to Warsaw. And from Warsaw, we traveled by train to the Polish port of Gdynia because we had to take a Polish ship. Although my uncle came here on the Ile-de-France, a French ship, and wanted to take us back on that. But the Poles would not let us leave unless we went on a Polish ship. So we went on the Józef Pilsudski, who happened to be a hero of the Poles.
And did you go directly to New York then?
We got directly to New York, disembarked in New York, got on the train, and came to Chicago.
And did you disembark at Ellis Island or elsewhere?
No. There was a different way for us to come, and I don't know what the regulations were at the time, because I guess because we were underage and we were with American citizens, and that made a big difference. Okay. It's not that they were non-American coming here. They had American citizenship. I'm talking about my aunt and uncle, and they were just bringing children.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Bohm. Oh, great question. Was there any anti-Semitism in the army? Because here you were in Europe fighting anti-Semitism in a war, but was there anti-Semitism in the army?
Well, the only so-called anti-Semitism I ever experienced in the army when we were in training in Alabama. And the man who shouted anti-Semitic remarks at me was a fellow who came from Chicago. And he was also in training in Alabama. But I found no anti-Semitism among the people of Alabama at all at the time I was down there in training.
Okay, great. So if you haven't had a chance to ask a question, I know there are a couple over here. If you've had a chance, yes.
My question is, Arvey, do you remember what your mother said to you and your brother when you left the United States?
Arvey, do you remember what your mother said to you and your brother when you left for the United States?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact Yiddish words, but she hugged us and kissed us and told us to behave and be good, and that one day she will come to visit us.
Okay. Elizabeth. So what are the one or two things you want everyone who's here to take away? Or why? Another way of answering it would be, why do you do these talks? Why do you share your story?
Well, I believe that many of these children particularly should know what their history is like. You know, we study the Bible, the stories of the Bible. We go back about 3,300 years and learn the history then. But there's also a lot of history in between, a lot of going on involving the Jews. And the importance, I think the importance particularly to the children here is how important it is to get the proper education and particularly a full education, meaning a Jewish education. You're all here are for being educated, and I think that's great. I think it's wonderful, because in my experience, my education served me well as I've gone through life.
Thank you. Okay, who hasn't had a chance to ask a question? Okay, go ahead. Do you ever feel sad about your memories?
Well, when I think back, sometimes, yes, I do. I definitely do. The sadness basically is because there was nothing we could do about it, particularly during the war, to stop, say, my mother and all my other relatives, 28 of them, who perished, to keep them from having been so destroyed.
Okay, yes. Mr. Brown, yes. Are you still in contact? Is your brother still alive? Is your brother still alive?
No, my brother passed away several years ago, and my cousins passed away before. They were all older. I happened to have been the youngest of the 5 that came to this country, and I'm the last one.
But you were you in touch with them all throughout their lives?
Yes, we lived together, got together, we did things together. Sure, we were a regular family here. We each made our own families, but we all got together at various times for holidays and other events, bar mitzvahs, weddings, all the usual things that families do.
Okay, last 3 questions, Julia. Great question. Have you ever been back to Poland?
No, only because of one reason. One of my other cousins did go back there, and when I said I'd like to, make the trip, he said, "Arvey, forget about it. There's nothing left there, not one vestige of our people."
Wow. Yes. What do you think your mom was doing when you were not there?
Well, before the Germans came, she was operating her little stall at the marketplace and selling coal to farmers.
Rachel? Tell us about your family that you have now.
Family I have now, I have a daughter. Let's see how many. I have 2 grandsons, and one of the grandsons just had a second baby, so I have 2 great-grandchildren. And of course, my current wife's family is part of it too. I think some of you may have known her, Zhenya. She's part of the family. And
Sasha.
yes, and we often get together. That's what families do. We always have done that.
That's great. Arvey, thank you so much for
You're very
enriching our
welcome.
lives.
Thank you.
And we have a presentation for you from some of our 6th graders. Turn around so they can all see you. Come side by side next to Arvey.
Basically, we're making this presentation to thank Arvey. We're giving him these flowers. So I don't really know what to say because we didn't practice or anything.
Would anybody like to say something?
Do you have anything to say?
Now,
If anybody has something to say, Rachel, would you like? Kate, sorry.
Can
Catherine, excuse me.
Thank
Right in the
you.
microphone.
Thank you, Arvey, for presenting your story to us and for enriching our knowledge of the Jewish culture.
Thank you. And the yellow flowers are symbolic of the yellow badge that Jews had to wear once during the Holocaust, and symbolic of the joy that we have in celebrating your life and in celebrating our history, and today in celebrating our freedom, a freedom that we know we must protect. Thank you so much, Arvey. And I'd like to invite up anyone who has we are all the family of the Jewish people, of all who have perished, but I know that some of you have met relatives who survived the Holocaust. And if you are one of those, I would like you to come forward to light a candle on behalf of those who perished. Arvey, you want to sit, or do you want to come forward with me? Do we have anyone who has a family member who survived the Holocaust that you know of? As I said, we all are the big Jewish family, but some of you have personal stories. Come on up. Come on over here. And can I get some assistance in passing out our papers here? Okay. If you can, they'll help you too. All right. So why don't you tell us who your relative was that you knew who survived the Holocaust?
My great-grandma.
Tell us your name.
I'm Kyla. My great-grandma escaped Germany when she was 14 and moved to England.
I'm Will. My grandpa survived the Holocaust.
And where was he from?
He was from Czechoslovakia.
My name's Spencer. My great-grandma survived the Holocaust. I actually never was able to figure. I never knew where she came from, but I just know that she was able to escape from America to America.
I'm Simon. My grandpa escaped from Poland when he was like 2, I think. He was hiding from Nazis underground.
My great-grandparents' families both moved here before the Great Depression and then were born in America during the Holocaust.
My grandma survived the Holocaust. She is from the Netherlands.
My grandpa survived the Holocaust. He was from Poland.
My grandma survived the Holocaust, and she's from Europe.
All right, we will light these candles together. If you had relatives that you know of who perished in the Holocaust, please rise. And we are all now going to rise so that we can say Kaddish together and remembrance of the 6 million Jews who died and the other 6 million who were victims of persecution. Yit Gadal, V'yit Kadash Shmei Rabbah. Yalma Divrak Yirute Yamich Malchute. V'chayachon V'yomachon V'chaye Dekol Beit Yisrael. Bagalav Uvizman Kariv V'emru Amen.
Rabba Mivarach Le'olam Olamei Amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitparach v'yitkomam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitzallah shemei kusha b'richo le'ela min kol bichata v'shirata tuzbechata v'nechamata da'amiran v'yalma v'yamru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya B'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Oseh shalom b'imroma hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen.
And Arvey, would you please lead us in the singing of Hatikva, the Hope, the national anthem of Israel?
Kalod b'leva pnima nefesh yehudi homiya ulefasei mizra kadima ayin letzio Sophia Orlo avda Tikvateinu Hatikva Shnot Apayim Lioram Hafshi Be'atzenu Eretz Zion V'Yerushalayim.
We will now depart quietly as follows.